Okay, go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
Okay, we're going to finish up Lightoller's interview, so let's just get right into it. Did you see Mr. Ismay at that time?
Mr. Ismay, as far as I know, from what I've gathered afterwards, was on the starboard side of the deck wholly, helping out there.
He did not enter the boat from the port side?
No, sir.
How many people do you think were in the seventh boat?
There were not any in it.
I mean the sixth boat.
The collapsible boat?
Yes.
I'd say about 15.
Wouldn't it hold any more than that?
Perhaps 20. They won't hold many. They are canvas. They will not stand
They
many.
won't stand very much?
Oh, no, sir.
So that they really do not answer the purpose of a lifeboat.
They are not as good as a lifeboat. No, sir.
Have neither the capacity nor the resistance?
No, sir. They are merely stowed in a smaller place. Perhaps you can stow at least 3 of those where you could stow one lifeboat. You can stow them on top of each other.
So, as far as your knowledge goes, the lifeboats on the port side consisted of how many lifeboats and how many of those canvas boats?
7 lifeboats, 1 emergency boat, which is on the same principle as the lifeboat, practically, only it is smaller and a handier boat, and 2 collapsible boats.
The one that was in the tackle was the last boat that was attempted to be lowered on the port side?
The collapsible boat?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How many of the collapsible boats were there altogether on the ship?
4.
And 16 of another type?
Yes, sir.
You must have been painfully aware of the fact that there was not enough boats there to care for that large passenger list, were you not?
Yes, sir.
Do you know who had charge of the starboard side of the lowering and the filling on the boats?
No, sir. Merely what I am told.
And what have you been told about it? Maybe we can get something from that.
As far as I know, and I think it is correct, Mr. Murdoch was on the starboard side. I was on the port side, and Mr. Murdoch was on the starboard side, and the chief officer was superintending generally, and lowered 1 or 2 of the boats himself.
And from whom did you get this information?
Of course, I saw Mr. Murdoch there when I had finally finished on the port side.
You went to the starboard side?
On top, yes, sir.
For the purpose of lowering this
I went over to see if I could assist.
And you saw him there?
I saw him there.
From anything you have been told, did he pursue the same course on the starboard side in reference to the filling of lifeboats and then complement of the seamen as you did?
That I could not say.
Was there any rule as to that?
No, sir.
As to the number of seamen?
No, sir. Except for boat drill, of course. That was not boat drill.
What was the number of the ship's crew?
Of seamen?
Yes.
71 seamen.
What constituted the crew besides seamen?
Firemen and stewards.
And their force?
Oh, yes. They mustered up something like 800, perhaps a little under, perhaps a little over, somewhere around 800. About 800, roughly speaking, firemen and stewards. A little less than 800. The crew altogether is about 850 or 860. That is, including seamen, firemen, and stewards.
And you had your full complement on this voyage?
As far as I know.
How do you account for your inability to get hold of more than 9 seamen to man these lifeboats on the port side?
Earlier, and before I realized that there was any danger, I told off the boatswain to take some men. I didn't say how many, leaving the men to use his own judgment. To go down below and open the gangway doors in order that some boats could come alongside and be filled to their utmost capacity. He complied with the order, and so far as I know, went down below, and I did not see him afterwards. That took away a number of men, and we detailed 2 men for each boat and 2 men for lowering down.
But you did not have 2 men for each boat, officer. You had only,
So far as they will go.
You only had 9 seamen to 7 boats.
Well, I've only been telling you approximately. As far as ever, I could put 2 seamen in a boat. If I didn't have seamen there, I had to put a steward there.
I understand that.
Sometimes there would be 3 seamen in a boat. As soon as the boats were lowered to the level of the rail, I would detail 1 man to jump in and ship the rudder, 1 man to cast adrift the oars, and 1 man would see that the plugs were in, and it would take 3 men.
You said you chose these men, and when the lifeboat is swung out from the ship and lowered, it is supposed that she has her full complement of officers and seamen, is it not?
She is swung out and lowered to the level of the rail, sir.
Level with the rail, but not against the rail.
No.
When you are lowering the lifeboat, you are supposed to have filled it to its safe capacity?
Lowering it afterwards from the rail down. You see, we have to swing it out first of all and lower it until it is level with the rail so that the people can have 1 foot on deck and the other foot to step into the boat. They must be level.
And when you called Major Puchen, you had no seamen?
Not that I could see, and I couldn't waste time looking for them.
When you put the 2 officers, if I understand you correctly...
No officers.
Stewards?
Stewards.
When you put the 2 stewards into the lifeboat, you had no seamen?
If I put 2 stewards in, as I say, I might have put 2 stewards in if there were no seamen.
How many of the ship's crew survived?
Seamen?
Seamen and others attached to employees?
43 seamen, 96 stewards and stewardesses, and 71 firemen.
71 firemen?
Yes.
And how many seamen?
43.
So that you lost 28 seamen?
Yes.
And how many of the crew have been saved altogether? Like, how many survived altogether?
210.
If the same course was followed on the starboard side with the lifeboats that you took on the port side, how were these men saved?
I don't know, sir. I know that a great number were taken out of the water. I made it my special business to inquire, and as far as I can gather, for every 6 people picked out of the water, 5 of them would be firemen or stewards. On our boat, as I have said before, there was Colonel Gracie and young Thayer. I think those were the only 2 passengers.
There were no women on the boat?
No, I am speaking of the overturned boat.
I refer to that. There were no women on your boat?
No, sir. These were all taken out of the water, and they were firemen and others of the crew.
How many were there on that boat?
Roughly about 30. I take that from my own estimate, and from the estimate of someone who was looking down from the bridge of the Carpathia.
Assuming there were 24 of those among the crew.
Yes.
That would still leave 190 to get over on these other lifeboats that were filled with women and children?
Some of the boats went back and picked people out of the wreckage after the ship had gone down. Mostly firemen and stewards.
What boats?
Some of the lifeboats.
Some of the lifeboats went back?
That is what I understand. Of course, I don't know.
How far would they have gone?
I don't know, sir. I'm only giving hearsay now.
They could not have gone very far. You will recall that the captain of the Carpathia said that the Carpathia did not linger about the scene of the collision but half an hour.
They could not have gone very far.
These boats would not have gone very far in going back to the scone of the wreck. You do not know of your own knowledge that any of these lifeboats were taken back to the scene of a wreck by anybody?
No, sir.
As a matter of fact, after rowing these boats as far as they were obliged to row them, in some instances several hours, would they have had little strength to have rowed back? Would they not, assuming that the men did the work?
I know that they went back because the men have told me that they were picked up out of the wreckage by the lifeboats that went back.
Of your own knowledge, you don't know anything about these lifeboats returning?
No, sir.
From what you have said, you discriminated entirely in the interest of the passengers, first the women and children, in filling these lifeboats.
Yes, sir.
Why did you do that? Because of the captain's orders, or because of the rule of the sea?
The rule of human nature.
The rule of human nature. And there was no studied purpose, as far as you know, to save the crew?
Absolutely not.
The fact that you only put 9 seamen into the boats that you lowered, which were half the entire complement of...
No, sir.
1/3?
About 1/3. Perhaps a little more than 1/3, but not half.
A little more than half when you consider that you did not fill the boat that was on the officers' quarters that was thrown without passengers into the sea?
Yes, sir.
And one other boat was so entangled in the gearing that it was useless?
Yes, sir.
And that left 18?
Yes.
Did I understand you to say that one of the 18 was injured?
Yes, you are right. I beg your pardon.
So, this really was a little more than half.
I had not thought that I put out half because I am under the impression that the chief officer put out a couple of the after ones on my deck, as well as supervising. He evidently found that he had the time and put out a couple of these boats, and he also lowered the emergency boat. So I think it is 3 he put out of 10 on that side. That left me 7. I think that is about what I put out. 7.
Did I ask you how many women and children there were aboard ship?
You did, sir.
Did you reply?
I do not know.
Is there any record available here of the exact number of passengers, men, women, and children? Mr. Franklin, do you have that?
That will be furnished.
But you are quite clear that there were no women that you could put into the last boat to fill it?
Not within my sight and hearing.
And you were on the boat deck?
I was standing on the boat. Oh, I do know the steward that went in the boat now.
And tell me who it was?
I do not know that I could give his name. If he's here now, I could recognize him if I saw him.
And that was in the 4th boat?
No, the last boat to be lowered in the tackles. The very last boat to be lowered in the tackles.
The 6th boat?
Yes, sir. I could not tell you his name now, but I do know there was a steward there.
Did he survive?
Yes.
Did you notice any Americans?
Aplenty.
Standing near you?
Any amount.
When you were lowering the women?
Any amount. They gave every assistance they could, regardless of nationality.
Did you hear any of their names?
What do you mean, at that time, sir?
Yes.
No, sir.
Did any of them attempt to give you their names?
No, sir.
Do you recall from anything that you heard on shipboard the name of any that you might have seen?
No, we are not brought in contact with the passengers at all beyond going our rounds.
Is it the custom, or was it the custom of your line to print a list of prominent passengers?
No, sir.
Or the passengers in a little leaflet?
Yes, sir.
The first or second day out?
Yes, sir.
And was this done?
Yes, it is done as far as possible before we leave home.
But it is not put out until after the ship has been to sea for a day or two, is it?
I think it is possibly put out the day of sailing, sir, but really I could not answer that question.
I wonder if we can attain that.
There is always one out the day of sailing, and there is a corrected one out later. We can give you the one out the day of sailing.
That is the one I would like.
Whether we can get you the corrected one or not is an open problem.
I will ask you, with what type of davit was the Titanic equipped?
What is known as the Welland patent.
Where were those passengers or people congregated when you last saw the Titanic? Were they huddled together in any special part of the ship?
No, sir.
In sinking, did the ship tilt?
Yes, sir.
To the fore?
Yes, sir.
How much?
Well, roughly, the crow's nest was level with the water when the bridge went underwater.
The crow's nest at the forward point?
That is on the foremast, the lookout cage.
The crow's nest at the highest point?
Yes, sir.
Was in the water?
Was just about level with the water.
When the bridge was submerged?
Yes, sir.
And about what angle?
I'm afraid I could hardly tell you the angle, sir.
Get the plan and find the height of the crow's nest above the deck, and that would give it.
The plan showing the height of the crow's nest and bridge would give it to you roughly.
I ask you again, there must have been a great number of passengers and crew still on the boat. The part of the boat that was not submerged, probably on the high point, as so far as possible, were they huddled together?
I could not say, sir. They did not seem to be. I could not say, sir. I did not notice. There were a great many of them. There was a great many of them, I know, but as to what condition they were in, huddled or not, I do not know.
Did they make any demonstration?
None.
Was there any lamentation?
No, sir, not a sign of it.
There must have been about 2,000 people there on that part, the unsubmerged part of the boat.
All the engineers and other men and many of the firemen were down below and never came on deck at all.
They never came on deck?
No, sir, they were never seen. That would reduce it by a great number.
After this impact, did you hear any explosion of any kind?
None whatever, sir.
What would be the effect of water at about zero?
At about freezing?
What would be the effect of water at about freezing on the boilers?
It is an open question. I have heard it said that they will explode, and others say they will not.
Have you ever known of a case?
Of a case in point?
Where they have exploded?
I was sucked down, and I was blown out with something pretty powerful when the ship went down.
After the ship went down?
Yes.
Just describe that a little more fully. You were sucked down?
I was sucked against the blower, first of all. As I say, I was on top of the officers' quarters, and there was nothing more to be done. The ship then took a dive, and I turned face forward and also took a dive.
From which side?
From on top. Practically midship, a little to the starboard side, where I had got to, and I was driven back against a blower, which is a large thing that shape, which faces forward to the wind, and which then goes down the stokehole. But there is a grating there, and it was against this grating that I was sucked by the water and held there.
Was your head above water?
No, sir.
You were underwater?
Yes, sir. And then this explosion, or whatever it was, took place. Certainly, I think it was the boilers exploded. There was a terrific blast of air and water, and I was blown out clear.
Was there any debris that was blown above the surface?
That I could not say.
At least you took your head out of the water.
I came up above the water, yes.
And how far from the sinking ship did it throw you?
It barely threw me away at all. Because I went down against these fiddly gratings immediately abreast of the funnel over the stokehole.
Was anybody else sucked down at that time?
Colonel Gracie, I believe, was sucked down in incidentally the same manner. He was sucked down on the fiddly gratings.
There must have been considerable suction.
That was the water rushing down below as she was going down.
Going down into the ship?
Exactly.
How did you get released from that?
Oh, I don't know, sir. I think it was the boilers again, but I do not distinctly remember. I do not know.
Where did you next find yourself?
Alongside of that raft.
Where?
Alongside of that upturned boat that had been launched on the other side.
Where had you gone at that time? Had you gone around the ship?
No, sir. The boat had come around.
Was there anyone on it?
I don't think so. I think they were around it.
Your position had not changed, but the boat's position had?
Yes, sir.
Were there any watertight compartments in that ship?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I could not tell you offhand, sir. 40 or 50.
Nearly 50?
I say 40 or 50. I cannot tell you offhand.
How were they constructed?
They were divisional bulkheads, watertight doors operated by electricity or mechanically.
Were those watertight compartments known to the passengers or crew?
They must have been.
How would they know?
By the plans distributed about the ship.
Were they advised at any time that there were watertight compartments? About how many?
40 or 50.
Were they advised that there were 40 or 50 watertight compartments?
I could not say, sir.
You heard nothing of that kind and gave no such warning yourself?
No, sir.
Are you able to say whether any of the crew or passengers took to those upper watertight compartments as a final last resort? I mean, as a place to die?
I'm quite unable to say, sir.
Is that at all likely?
No, sir. It's very unlikely.
As for yourself, you preferred to take your chance in the open sea?
Undoubtedly.
Where were those compartments with reference to the boat deck?
Below the boat deck, sir.
How far below?
They extend from the bottom of the ship about 4 decks up.
Would they extend up as high as 50 feet?
About that.
Above the water?
Oh, they are above the waterline, and they extend above the waterline.
Are they all above the waterline?
No, sir. They're from the bottom of the ship up to above the waterline.
Have you been in any of the watertight compartments of the Titanic?
I've been in all of them.
What are these doors made of?
As far as I understand, of metal for that purpose.
And how are they fastened? Are they locked by bar, or bolt, or key?
The lower section of the watertight doors, fore and aft the ship, are operated by electricity, and then they automatically lock themselves. They cannot be touched while the current is on.
How can they be opened?
By switching the current off and opening them by hand down below.
If there were no current, how could they be opened?
By hand.
In what manner?
By ratchet and screw, lever, and cogwheel.
A person would have to be rather familiar with that construction in order to open them.
No, sir. The handle is right alongside every door, and the manner for opening them is obvious.
But when the doors are closed and the current is on?
I am only speaking of those at the bottom of the ship.
All right, let's go up a little higher and tell me about the doors and the construction there.
They are operated by hand, closed by lever. They can be closed from the deck above or from the deck you are on. There is a specially constructed key that fits into the deck above. When you turn it around, the door closes. One man can close or open it.
You must first have a key.
135. Yes. Keys are kept alongside of the doors. When the door is closed, it so engages a system or series of wedges that it is watertight.
And what are those watertight compartments for?
To shut out the water, retaining the water in one compartment to prevent its going fore and aft the ship.
And how much of the ship had gone down when you left it?
I went underwater on top of the officers' quarters, immediately at the fore part of the forward funnel. So she was underwater at the fore part of the forward funnel.
You say that after you came up, you attached yourself to this raft. The funnel fell upon those who were upon one side of the raft?
I say the funnel fell down, and if anybody was on that side of the raft, it fell on them.
Then by that time, the entire ship was not submerged.
Oh, dear no, and not by considerable.
And what portion of the ship was out of water at that time?
The stern of the ship was completely out of the water.
It was out of the water at an angle?
Yes, I see.
What other officers beside you survived?
The 3rd, 4th, and 5th, sir.
Would you kindly give their names?
Mr. Pittman, 3rd officer, Mr. Boxhall, 4th officer, and Mr. Lowe, 5th officer.
You'd better give their initials.
Mr. H.J. Pittman, 3rd officer, Mr. J.G. Boxhall, 4th officer, and Mr. G. Lowe, 5th officer.
Wow, what an interview.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it just ends just him giving the names instead of like a thank you or something, but that is the end of that one, and that was wild.
But I think we'll see Lightoller later on, though.
I have a feeling they were really, really grilling him, and they're also, like you said, Ismay is definitely coming back.
But I don't think the senator has any lifeboat knowledge whatsoever, because the questions he was asking, like,
it almost sounds like he's never been on a ship before, and then I can't believe that Lightoller got sucked under. Like, he didn't just, at first he made it sound like he kind of jumped off, or hopped off a little,
Yeah, the boat just went out from
under him. Okay, here we go, jumping in, but to get, how terrifying.
Against a grate.
Yeah, the fiddly grates. Oh. So fiddly.
So fiddly.
And then to be asked, I'd like to go through that, and then to be asked, like, oh, well, you didn't check your watch? Did you get anybody's names? Were you asking there? Did anybody tell you? Like, first of all, if I'm hopping on a lifeboat, and
an upside down lifeboat.
Unless maybe the women and children, maybe I would, like, in a panic, scream my husband's name, or we're the Carpenters, to try, I don't know, but I don't...
Mr. J.G. Carpenter!
I think it wouldn't be, like, cross my mind at all to be giving my names, or to be taking the names, or, like, oh, let me go get my watch out of my barracks.
I might need to time something.
Yeah, let me check my time.
Because that was between when he didn't know it was important, or a big deal, and then when he did know...
Yeah, yes, I think that was in the previous one, but when he said that it was just a little grinding,
and even loading the boats, like I was just loading them like we were supposed to, and then, I was slamming them.
Yeah, just filling them at that point.
Jeez, I can't even imagine the emotion going from just, let's get you on the boat, to, we're going under, going under.
I'm getting sucked under. And then every person so far has also mentioned that everyone was very quiet and orderly and helpful, and it's really not how it's portrayed at all in in recreations, TV shows, movies.
Was there any? Yeah, he thinks there should be a lot of fighting, but it really, really got me when he said that they couldn't have been calmer or quieter if they had been in church. That was just like, gave me the
makes
goosebumps.
The whole thing take on a more eerie vibe, because you would assume that people would be screaming and, it would be hectic, but it seems like it was an entirely different form of
But it was such a different time then.
That's true.
Because I don't see a lot of that would be happening now.
Yeah, now.
No. You go.
No,
I'll wait.
Everyone would.
They
wouldn't need to do a hearing. It would be on everybody's phones and uploaded before.
And I don't think guys would be waiting for the women. I think there'd be some shoving involved.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be way more chaotic.
The boats would be overcrowded.
I think the employees would also be hopping on rather than...
Again, the stewardesses, I just have to say again.
That is a big burn.
I thought because I was a girl.
And the crew member.
Women.
I could be doubly hopeful.
I didn't even think about that they could help on the boats, like you said, but I just like, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, God forbid women row.
Women and children. Well, they're delicate, and in those giant dresses and stuff, I don't think they could reach
true.
the oar.
Oh, it's soggy.
I have to reach that oar way over there.
Oh, and this is such a weird point too, but they really did make a point to ask him what he was wearing and that he didn't put anything on, and so I'm just picturing him sometimes in his skivvies and a life vest or something.
Well, dang it, where's my watch?
I forgot my watch.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he didn't even get himself dressed, so of course he doesn't have his watch.
It's so bizarre. Oof.
Just a note from the readers, we want to thank you guys for listening, and we really value your feedback, so please let us know what you're thinking, either in the comments or at TitanicTranscripts@gmail.com.